Hey everyone. So today we're going to be using the Google Places API, and that's pretty much the screen right here that we're working on. Yeah, so we're going to be using the Google Places API, and we're going to use that API so that we can pretty much find restaurants near us. And we're going to be using the text search part of the Places API. This right here. And to get there, all you have to do is go to developers.google.com, apps, and then pretty much, and we're going to be using web search version. So we're going to be working with the actual API itself. We're not going to use any SDKs. It's a little bit more work, but it should be fun. And if anything, we'll get it done. So let's look at the text search API. A text search API. So the text search API is basically, this is a new version. So the text search API makes it that you can say enter some type of address, or you could say pizza restaurant in New York, and that will give you the API will return to you a response with like places nearby, whether it be like a pizza place is nearby, and you get that array. So to actually get the endpoint we have to hit is this right here. And let me see if I can zoom in some more so you can see that. So the endpoint is this right here. So we're gonna copy this, and then let's look at how we have to structure like our requests. It says also we'll be using SwiftUI for this. Should I mention that earlier? Yeah, iOS apps. So for the request now, it says that we have to pass parameter say with the title with the key text query and pretty much whatever search term we want. And we have to add some header values. So that would be content type and then this. And then we also have to pass the API key, and we pass that to the header. So we're not going to be like passing all these parameters just to the URL. If you want to do that, there's an older version, and that's the old Places API, but we're only doing the newer version right now. All right, so yeah, so we have to pass this key that we want to handle for the API, and then we have to actually get an API key, and we're going to pass that as a header too. I'm going to show you how to get your API keys right after this. So the other thing we can pass is Google file mask, x.google file mask, and this is basically for the value. What this is doing is that because the places object, what Google would send us back is so big, basically we can specify what exact values we want from it. So instead of it sending us back everything, we can just say, oh yeah, we just want places that display name, or we might just want places that formatted address right here. Cool. And then basically we would just use our endpoint. So yeah, and then this is what the response would look like. So it's a places header up here in our response, and then the value that has, the parameter is pretty much like an array of place objects. All right, cool. So we're gonna jump to SwiftUI in a sec, but to Xcode in a sec. But before we do that, you to actually use this API, you need to get an API key. As you see, we have to pass the API key in the header here. So hit use API keys when you get here, and scroll down, and then pretty much you have to hit this button, and then you'll be able to follow and pretty much create your own API key. If you don't have an account, you might have to make an account, but it's pretty straightforward. Don't want to do that because I don't want you to see my API key. Anyway, so we get an idea of what we were working with. So first, let's see if we can jump to Xcode and I maybe start building out a basic service class, just because I feel like that's what's going to take a lot of the work. Usually I start with building out the UI, but I feel like if you're here for this, you might just want to see how I'm setting up the service, maybe. So before I begin, I saved my API key to user defaults already. So for me to request it, you're just gonna see me use it like this. So user default standard.for key, and then I'm gonna use this API key. I basically just stored it in my simulator. You won't have to do this. You could just put your API key inside the string. All right, so let's get rid of this, and let's get rid of this. Nice. All right, so right now all they're seeing is just like a basic view right here. As I said, we're kind of just gonna hold off on creating the UI. We're gonna try the UI right now, and we're gonna try something different. We're gonna try starting directly with this service, and we're gonna be using Swift concurrency for this. So I'll jump over here, and the first thing I'm gonna do is create a folder, and not a file. I want to create a folder, and I'm gonna call this services. Yeah, I'm gonna call this services, and then inside services, I'm gonna create a new file, and it's just gonna be a Swift file. Almost clicked on folder at a time. And then for this, I guess I'm just gonna call this API service. I'd probably just call our folder that too, but it's fine. And to start this off, I'm gonna go with using a protocol. If you watch my videos before, like my previous stream, I basically create this blueprint of, sorry about that, my phone dropped, but basically I create a blueprint of what our service is gonna need. And also by doing this, it makes it easier for writing unit tests. So I'll start by creating protocol API service. And I will start by saying something like func, and then I'll say fetch places, fetch restaurants, because we're fetching, we only want to get restaurants. And I believe the API really does have a way how we can specify just restaurants or just bars or just maybe grocery stores. Okay, so fetch restaurants, and as I said, we're using Swift concurrency with this. So I'd be like, I have to make the function async, because we're going to use the call will be asynchronous, and I want to be able to handle all of my errors using like by throwing. So I'll mark this with a throws too. Really what I want to do is to have this return some type of array of restaurants. But I don't have a restaurant model yet. Okay. And basically our array of, we're calling it restaurant, but it's really going to be that place model that Google is sending us back. So before we continue this part, let's jump over back to our folders. Sorry, and we're going to create a new folder, and this is going to be for our models. And this is going to be how we basically represent that data right there. Say models. And then let's just say Swift file, and then we'll say models again. And now inside here, I'm going to create a new struct, and this is going to be our transformation, our model that we're going to use, which is going to be a restaurant. And it's going to be the data that we got from the places API, which is their place object. So one thing we know we have to do, since we're going to be decoding some data, we have to mark this with a decodable, so we can decode it. And because this is SwiftUI, and I want to be able to show a list of all the restaurants, I have to mark this with identifiable too. And if you're not familiar with SwiftUI or not familiar with identifiable, you know I'm gonna get an error right now, and it's because identifiable requires us to have a parameter, a property called in our struct called whatever that conforms to it, called ID. I feel like Google does have an ID property, so I'll just put ID string for now. But usually if like a object doesn't have it, I'll do something like ID equal UID just to give it something else. But I know for a fact that they do have an ID property, so I'll just do ID string. All right, so now we have our basic struct here to represent our places API response. So we need to see what other data we can get from the places API. But now what I'm thinking is to just test with just like a few parameters just to see if we can actually get the API working, and then like we'll dive into getting more parameters. So let's maximize this again. And then I'll add this link inside the description. And then let's go down to text search, not nearby search, text search. Then what we're going to do is scroll down and see if we can see the place object, is what the response would return, so we can know what properties we can get from it. Okay, so we see the place highlighted here. So we can just click this to see what the object will look like. And we'll see that it has something called a name, all information representing a place. It says it has a name, so we probably need that. It does have an ID parameter, so we're good with that. And it has a display name parameter. It has the types, some national phone number, it's a lot of rating, definitely, and photos. Okay. So for now, let's see if we can get name, ID, and display name. And then once we can get, if we can get those three things, then we can start fetching some, adding in more properties and so forth. So name, ID, and display name. We'll say let name, and then display name is a nested type, like object. And I'm gonna comment this out for now, and I'm gonna jump back to Google Maps platform, the website, and then I'm gonna look at what localized text looks like. So it's localized variant of a text particular language. Right now, for this app, I don't really care about this parameter right now. So I'm just going to create a struct that has a text parameter, a property, and just make it a string. And that will represent our localized text. We're going to create a nested version for, oh, sorry, for this one, display name. And it looks like it's used also here. So let's minimize that. And actually just maximize Xcode. We're good right now. We're gonna uncomment this out, and then it hasn't do this, but pretty much I'm gonna create a crit struct. I can literally call it localized text too, and I'll make it decodable. I don't think we have to make this identifiable since it's like inside a nested struct already, but we'll see later on when we try to use it in the SwiftUI view. So we'll say let text string, and then we'll set the display type here to be localized text. Should be good now. All right, cool. So we have our model now called restaurant, and we're going to use this to get ID, name, and the display name from the places API when we call it. So we're going to jump back to services, and now we have a model that we kind of want for return. So we'll make it that, update this function to make it that it has a return, and then we're going to make it be restaurant. Nice. So now we're going to create a separate class that's actually going to implement this. So API service, impl. I will make it API service there. And then we're going to get an error because it's going to ask us like, yo, you need to add this function. You need this fetch restaurants function. So I will do that for it. Yeah, so I'll do that for it, and I'll say fetch restaurants. Automatically fills it out. Perfect. So we're gonna get another error because we're saying we're supposed to return an array, but we're array of restaurants, but we're not. So to quiet that for now, because I'm being lazy, I'll just do return an empty array for now. And now the next thing that we need is our actual endpoint that we're supposed to hit. So let's jump back to website, and let's go back one more. I need to get just pretty much just copy this endpoint. Do that, we jump back here. And then we're gonna keep this in a constant. Let's make it private. No reason for anybody else to have users for anything. So private let, and then I will endpoint. And I'll just make a string, mark that, paste that in there. And then now we have that. So what we need to do, we're going to be using, as I said, Swift concurrency. So it's going to be an async throws function. But to start that off, we need a URL. So we're going to convert the string to our URL. So say guard, let URL equal URL. And we're going to transform it to a URL now. So let's pass in string. And we'll just pass in endpoint. And then I'll say else. I don't want to just return. That's like, I don't want to return just another empty array. Like I could do this and error there would go away. But that's not what we want to do. If we can convert the URL, we want to know that and flag it so we know that as an error. So we're going to create our own custom error. So we'll say enum. And we're going to call this API error. I'm just being lazy. And I'll say error. And I'm going to add a couple cases. So I'm going to add case invalid URL. And then I'm going to add another case, and I'm going to call this invalid status code. And I'm gonna add an extra one where it's like I can take whatever error that the system says and use that error. So I'm gonna do custom and then make it that it takes a string, which is gonna be that error in string format that we can use for someone else maybe. So now what we can do now, instead of returning, since our function does throws, I don't know if I should say throws, anyways, so we're gonna throw, I'm gonna say API error that custom, and then we are for custom, oh, wrong one, sorry. We're gonna actually use URL error here, invalid URL error here. I'm gonna throw that error. Now we have the URL, so now we can actually start using URL session to like make the API requests. And with Swift concurrency, this is mad easy. So you say let data response, because when we make the URL, our music, we have it like this in a tuple, because whenever we make the URL response, it returns a tuple with a parameter as data and a parameter as response. I'll say equal, and then I'll say try await URL session shared. We're gonna look for the async one. So I use this a lot, so it's gonna pretty much be the top one right here. And SwiftUI is really good at knowing that, like, yo, you're probably gonna need this one. So make sure you use the async throws one right here. So hit that, and then we're gonna throw in our URL here. And we should still, so we're not seeing any errors, but there are some problems here. So this call to this URL session that shared that data, this can throw an error. We're not handling it at all, so let's put this inside a do catch. And then we're going to have a catch block where we can catch any errors that might occur. Now let's just, oh, we could actually use our custom throw here. So we'll say API error, custom error. And then because we're in a catch block, we'll automatically get the error variable. So this error variable I'm using, I didn't create it at all. It's pretty much just because we're in a catch block. Nice. Now, the next thing that we can do is pretty much check our response. So we want to check our response to make sure that the status code is either 200 or 290 or between, or 200 or between 299. So let's say guard let HTTP URL response. I will say response, and then we'll convert it to HTTP URL response. And this is so that we that's because this type right here is how we can get the status code. So you know, like when like you make some API request and it's like status code 200, that means everything good. Or you see status code 404, you know, some bad, or 500, you know, some bad. So we're just checking that code. So now we have the response converted. So now we're gonna check if the status code is between 200 or 299. And if it does contain it, then this is what I'm gonna do. I am gonna say it contains HTTP URL response, that's status code. Then I'll say else. And instead of returning, I'm gonna throw an error. Let me scroll up some more. I just realized I'm blocking some of that for you. My bad. Okay, so I'll keep scrolling up just to make sure that doesn't happen again. My bad, yo. And then I'll say throw, and then I'll say API error, and then I'll just put a invalid status code error here, which is the one we made up here. Okay, cool. Let's scroll up again, make sure I'm not blocking you. And then for here, now we know, so basically if we make it past all these steps, we know our URL is good, we know our response is good, so now we can start decoding our data. So to do that, we can just say let restaurant equal restaurants equal JSON decoder decode, and I'm going to put restaurant right here, but this is going to eventually get error. There's something else that we have to change, and then we're going to put data here. Basically we're converting the information that we got. Oh yeah, So this isn't the error I was talking about, but there will be another error eventually. So basically we're converting the data that we got from our API to be in this format, an array of restaurants. And that's gonna give us back what we want. So let's return restaurants to satisfy. And we can get rid of this unnecessary empty area here. And now we've basically almost finished everything we need for this function for our service class. So there's one more thing that we need to do. Well, a couple more things. Actually made one mistake. So we actually can't. So because we're using so there are going to be two things you're going to change. So because we have to, if we jump back to here, see that we have to pass in a text query, and can just be whatever string I guess the user searches for. But we also have to pass in some headers. So the first header that we have to pass in is content type. And it has to be this, then text Google API, and then the key, and then this. So to do that, we have to, let's just copy this so that we don't have to keep going back and forth. And then we're gonna make a couple changes to how we are doing this. So let's paste this here, and I'm just pasting the stuff from the Google Docs that we got. I just don't want to go back to it up. So the first thing is we need to add a couple headers. So one of the headers, add them in a different line so it's easier. Okay, so one of the headers is content type, application slash JSON. There is another header with a key of this, and we got to pass in our API key, and then another one with our key of this, and then we have to pass in these, which are every value that we want. So to fix this, right now we're just using a URL. We can't add in, or at least I'm not aware of how we could add in URL headers to our URL. So if let me just try. Yeah, there's nothing for that. So what we can do instead is, instead of having URL session take just a URL, we can have it take a URL request. So let's do this. Let's pause this right here. So we're going to comment this just for 1 second. And then we're going to say URL. So with this URL that we have here, we're going to use this to create a URL request. So we're going to say that URL request. And then we'll say URL request, and it takes a URL. So we'll just pass in URL. So the reason I wanted to show you this is because when I first used the Google Places API, I tried using this direct approach. I tried using the URL directly, but the issue is that for the new Places API, we have to pass the values that we need in the request body and through the headers. So we have to create a URL request to do that. We'll say var URL request, and then for URL request, we'll tap that again. And then we have to look for someone that we can use for headers. So you see set value for header field. So we'll say open that. And then we scroll down and we see right here where it says we should, for one of the header fields, we should have a value for content. One of the keys should be content type. So I go over here and I hit that and I say content type. Then the value should be this application JSON. Let's add that in, paste that in as well. And now we have to do that for 2 more. So let's say URL request again. That's set value for header. And the next one is X Google API key. X Google API key. Let's copy that. Copy that. And for my API key, I don't want to show you. So I actually stored it to my user defaults before this. So it's inside pretty much the app right now. So for me to get it, I'm going to do it this way. So I'm going to say, you won't have to do it this way. You could just put in, say, this empty string and just paste your key right in there. But because I saved it to user defaults for security, I have to do it this way. So I'm going to say let API key equal user I mean, user defaults. Yeah, that's standard, that's string. And then I saved it with this key. So I'm gonna say that. I know it's there, so I don't even have to worry about that. And then for this portion here, as I said, you would put in your actual API key. For me, I'm gonna put this API key. And then I'm gonna put this as a little comment up here so you remember. So this is my stored key for security. Use yours the regular way. All right, that's for you. All right, so we need to add, so we added in the API key. The other, I know I see these errors, but we can relax. All right, I could pass it by just doing this, just returning an empty array to silence it. They won't see those to like bother you anymore. That's just a warning. No, so yeah, so the other parameter that we need to add is field mask. So let's copy that. And we'll say URL requests. That's set value. And then we're gonna add in that key. So paste that right there. Then what was the value that they needed? Okay, so for this one, you can specify if you only want what exact parameters you want. And that's just to make sure that maybe the API request returns faster instead of giving you all of the places data. Plus, we don't care. So we're just gonna put star, which is gonna give us back everything. So let's just let's just discard this. Well, there's one more portion that we need, but we can get rid of the headers part. So just delete that. And then, oh, people, I forgot we weren't seeing. So now I can scroll up and I'll just hit for the string and then just pass in star. So now Google would pretty much just send me everything. So now we are going to uncomment some of this. Wait, let's uncomment piece by piece. I'll just do it. So right now, what we're going to do now is instead of using the URL session that just takes a URL, we're going to use the one that takes a URL request. Right? So for our URL request, we can just pass in the one we created. URL request, just like that. Now, there's one more parameter that you might be noticing that we're not sending, and that's text query, which is pretty much whatever the user typed in. So to send that, we have to, basically, we would have to update our API or our function to handle that. So let's just scroll up to our protocol. And here we're going to add search term. I'm going to make this a string. And we'll just have to update down here. For now, I'm just going to copy this. And I'm just going to. So now, as we said, it says that we have to add an extra, we have to add a query, a key. We have to add some data where the key is text query, and then we're going to pass for the value, we're just going to pass in whatever the user is searching for. To do that, we can say pretty much something like we could say let. This is how we're going to store that data. So we're going to say let URL text query. And then we're going to, this is actually just going to be a dictionary. The first thing they said is first, so let's do this. Then we are just going to pass in search term. Yeah. So you see how this is already looking different from how we would usually do this. We'd usually just create a URL and then maybe just add on some additional parameters to that URL so that different say if we want the search term Q or S so that we can get that data. With the Places API new version, you would have, and if you're using Swift, you're gonna have to use URL requests so that you can add the headers and you can specify the type of request, which we're going to do in a second, and so that you can encode the data that you want to send and then put it in the HTTP body. So this data that we have here, which is going to be whatever the user typed in, we have to actually convert this to data, and then we're going to add it inside our URL request. So now you're seeing how way different this is. So at this point, we can kind of honestly uncomment the rest of this. Most of the work that we're going to be doing is going to be above. So uncomment this, and then we can get rid of this empty array. Nice, we shouldn't get any errors now. So now, like we said, we have to convert this text array text query dictionary to be a part of our URL request. So how are we going to do that? We can't add it as a header like we did up here because these values aren't headers. What we have to do is add them to our request body. And if we type in, say, URL request.http body, you see that this needs a data, but text query is just a dictionary, so we can't just put it in there like that. So we have to convert it. So to do that, we can use JSON serialization to pretty much encode it and convert it to data. So we'll say something like search term data, and then we'll say try JSON serialization. So earlier we used JSON decoder, so this is a serialization. And then I think it's just data object. So we're gonna use data with object, and make sure you use the one that can throw. So we're gonna use this one, data with object, and it's a type. The object that we can pass in is any, and this works because we're converting a dictionary, and any just mean you can pass in whatever you want, any type you want. So it's a data any, and then I'm gonna throw our text query in here, which is this, and now this has been converted to a data type. Okay, data. So now we can add this to our URL request HTTP body. Yo, I know, like, doing it this way, I don't know why they chose to do it this way for the new version of the API, but yeah, you have to add in the headers, you have to add in the HTTP body and all of this. So we'll say URL request that HTTP body equal to search term data, right? And now we have to do one more thing, which is basically tell it what type of what type of method are we doing this? HTTP method are we doing this? So you might think it's a get since we're just getting some data, but if you read here, it says on the Google website, it says pass all parameters in the JSON request body or in headers as part of the post request. For example, all of this. So we have to do it in a post, do it as a post. So just tell URL request to specify a post, because I think by default it does it as a get. We have to type in HTTP method. You see it just takes in string, and then I'll just type in literally post. And now we should be okay. So again, I know y'all were probably, I hope y'all didn't leave already, because yeah, we have to, if you thought just using the URL was gonna work, it's not. You have to switch to using a URL request. I made the same error when I originally did this, so I just want you to know. So I had to kind of show you that part that, yo, this isn't how it works, just so you don't make the same issue I did. Yeah. So now let's test out. So now our service layer is done. Yeah. The only thing is that we don't have any readable errors linked to this. We'll add these in later, but let's see if we can just check if our service is working. So let's start working with some views. So we're gonna, for now, let's just jump to content view right here. And we are really gonna use, we want to use MVVM for this. So we have to create a couple view models and a couple other things. So I'm gonna do this really, really fast so we can just jump right through it. So for now, I'm gonna get rid of this. This is our content view. And I'm just gonna put a tab view here. And then I'm going to create, so basically I'm going to use this as like our main parent view for everything. And then I'm going to create a new folder. And in here, I'm going to call this restaurants view. Restaurants view. And then in here, I'm going to create both a Swift file and a SwiftUI file. Swift file is going to be our view model. So it's a restaurants view model. And then we're going to hit that again. And then we're going to jump on SwiftUI view this time. I'm going to say restaurant view as a SwiftUI view, not view model. Okay. All right, so now that we have a restaurants view, all we have to do is basically we're going to make it that our restaurants view model has the service layer logic that we need. So to do that, we can say class. We're going to create first a view model. So say restaurants view model. Have it conform to observable object. And then what we need to do now is introduce our services to our view model. So we're going to have it as a dependency. So we're going to say let services, and then we're going to call the protocol version of our service. So if we jump to service, you'll see that it's actually the protocol. I'm not calling the actual class here. And that's because I want to make it that whenever we decide to start testing restaurants view model, we can just pass in any type, any class that just conforms to our protocol, which is API service. That way we can pass in mocks, so we're not actually using real API calls in our unit test. All right, so hit init there. And then, so now basically our restaurants view model has access to our services API as a dependency. What's gonna happen is every time we initialize restaurants view model, we'll have to pass in the API service. I don't really care about doing this unless it's inside the unit test. So for now, I'm going to give a default value, API service info. And then we'll jump back over to our view right here. And then we'll scroll down. And we're going to introduce our view model to our restaurants view. So we'll say at observed. Oh, actually, we don't have to use observed object. We could use a state object. A state object var view model, and this will be restaurants view model. Our preview is going to complain because now we say it needs a restaurants view model, and I'll just do that. We don't have to worry about initializing because remember we are passing in a service, because remember we gave it a default value, which we won't do that in unit test though. All right, so now what we need to do is jump back to our restaurants view model, and since we have connected our restaurants view model to our SwiftUI view now, and we have an API service in our restaurants view model as a dependency, let's make a function call. Let's create a function that can actually make the API call. So we'll say func, and I'll say fetch restaurants. And then because the function that we're gonna need call, our function that we're going to call on self.services is actually a async function. It's going to ask us that we have to make the function that's calling async. But I'll make you see the error in a second. So also the call that we're making can throw an error, so we have to wrap it in a do catch, and that way we can actually handle whenever we get errors too. So next, what we're going to do is say let restaurants equal services that fetch restaurants, and then for now we'll add in some search term like food in Jamaica, right? And then this is going to ask us to add a try and then await, and then it still might complain because it says async call in a function that does not support concurrency. And if we see that, we just have to update the function that's actually making the API call here. So now we'll click print. Actually, let's do dump, because dump will make it that we see the data, but it's in like a way better format. So it's a restaurant, dump restaurants. And now we have a function that basically fetches the data and then just prints it. Let's set a breakpoint, which is what we want. We just want to see if our API service is actually working. So let's set the breakpoints here. And then so if we're able to get the data, we'll print it. If not, we have error, we'll just print error. So we have to do one more thing though. So to test this is we have to jump to our restaurants view and basically call this API. But usually I don't like doing this. I actually just won't. I'm going to create a VStack and I'm going to put a text in here. I just hate calling like just like a text like that. Let's say whatever, I don't care what that says. And then on the VStack, I'll add a dot task. Then I'll say await view model fetch restaurants. And now I'm going to run this. And basically we want our breakpoint to hit whenever the screen loads. Open the doc. We want our breakpoint to hit whenever the screen loads and shows us restaurants view. Did I add that in here? Oh, I forgot to add it inside our content view. So we'll do that real quick. So restaurants view, add in the view model that it needs, just like that. And we can add I'll turn on the preview so you see like some type of visual as I'm doing this. And then so you see it's the same text that I pretty much wrote earlier. I just, yeah. And then add a tab item. And a tab item is just so you can see, if I zoom out, you can see you're gonna see a tab item up here. So I'm gonna make it a image system name. I'll make this I'll call this a whole house. No. And then I will say, oh yeah. So that's basically that, but we can actually do two things. I'll cut this, add this in a VStack, paste this here, then I'll say text, and then I will say search. Since we search, just say restaurants. Okay, cool. Now we'll be able to see the view. So let's just run this again. And again, right now we only care about that this breakpoint is getting hit, so we can see if the data is we're getting the data and if we're decoding it. So we hit an error. So let's see what that error is. So data couldn't be read. So more than likely this is some bad format in our data. Maybe there's a parameter that isn't being used in some of these models. Let's see what we could. Sometimes it could be localized text not there, because we're not using that many. So let's see if we make localized text optional, if this will run. Otherwise, there's a different way how we can test it. So we did still hit the error. So let's pause this. And then we're going to jump to our services file. Jump here. And so we're adding in the headers. We added the text query. And then we added it as data. We specified the post. Let's see if we can see exactly what that decode error is, because I'm pretty sure this is a decode error. So I want to make sure I get that error specifically. So I'm going to grab this. Do both of these. I'm going to put them in their own. Yeah, I'm going to grab these and put them in their own do block right here. And I'll say catch. And this is one of the beauties of coding live. Yeah. All right. Then we're going to put a print here, error. And then we're going to set, so if it's a decode error, we'll hit this right here. Okay. Otherwise, we'll just missing. We got the restaurants, try 12. Oh yeah, we're not returning, we're not throwing an error here. Throw API error. Custom error. Localize this. Nice. So now we'll be able to see exactly, we'll see if it's a decode error, and we'll be able to see what parameter is probably being the problem. We did hit this one right here, so it's definitely a decode error. So we could say pure error, and we can see it says, oh yeah, expected to decode array any, but found a dictionary instead. So what this? So if we jump back to our Google, we'll see that this is how the response is gonna look. So how we have it is we're expecting an array of items, but really and truly what's happening is we actually have to account for this key up here called places, and then this maps to an array of places. So to do that, we just have to modify our models anymore. And I know I mentioned, remember earlier when I said there's gonna be an error coming up, that didn't happen. This is the one that happened. All right, so I was talking about, but kind of forgot about it. But yeah, so to fix this though, we have to say struct restaurant response. We're gonna create a new model. It's gonna be like a parent model, if you want to call it that. And it's gonna be decodable. And in here, all we have to do, so if we go back to Google, you see all it says is we have a property called places, and then it maps to an array. So we're gonna do that. So we're gonna say, come back to Xcode. We're gonna say let places be restaurant. So now instead of decoding the data as just an array of restaurants, we're gonna decode it as a restaurant response. And we can get rid of this optional now, since this probably wasn't the issue. So we go to API service, and then right here where we were decoding the data, let me make sure I'm not blocking it. Yeah, so right here where we were decoding the data as an array of restaurants, we're going to decode it instead as a restaurant response. Nice. And we have to update how we're returning that data then, because now this is going to return a return response type. But we're expecting an array of restaurants. Let's just change this to restaurant response. And then we'll go down here, change this, and then on this we'll just return places, which is pretty much our restaurant. So now if we run this again, I have a good feeling about this one, because that was the only other error I forgot about that was still in there. Okay, so we actually make it to the do part, this inside the do part, and we were able to decode the data since we got to this line. So that means one, the API is set up correctly, and we were able to decode the data. So if we print this, now you'll see we see the data printed down here. So we see it. So we're only getting display name. So we see this right here. Nice. So we know that decoding the data this way is working. All right. So remember, if you originally started using just like a URL, you can't do it like that if you're using it with you're using the places version, the new version API. If you're using the places new version API, you have to use a URL request, add in the headers, add in the 3 headers. I'll just scroll up here. Let's jump to it. Yeah, so you have to add in these 3 headers, and then the data, like the search term that you want to send, you have to put it in, say, as a dictionary, and then convert that dictionary by serializing it to data. And then you add that inside your URL request like this, and then put it inside the HTTP body like this. Also, you have to specify a specified HTTP method for the places API using the search text. The text search, you have to use post. So just bear that in mind, or just rewind the video, take your time, and just add what you need in. I'm talking on the screen a lot, so you can pause it and just grab what you need. All right, cool. So now the next thing is, let's see if we can at least just show the names inside our view, just to make sure more of this is working. So get rid of this. We're gonna say a list, and we're gonna say we want to be able to change this data based from something inside our view model. But right now we don't have a property that's actually holding the restaurants. We go inside our view model. Let's maximize this. And if we go inside our restaurants view model, you'll see that we have this restaurants variable here, but it's kind of trapped in the scope inside our function. We don't want that. We want to be able to use this as a property on our view model. So I'm going to add a publish variable here. Restaurants and then I'll say restaurant. I'll return a empty array. Then this will just be an empty array like this right here. And the reason I'm using a publish variable is because this API request, as we said, it's mad big. So more than likely it's not going to return in time. So what we want to do is basically, whenever we do get that data, if we get it late and say the view was already showing, we want this new data to just show up on the view. So if we marked it with at publish, that will happen. SwiftUI will notice that this data changed and it will show up on the view. So I have to make it that instead of just creating a new variable here, let's, whenever we get that data, assign it to our restaurants. Let's just remove that so that let it know that to make it know that we're using our publish variable. And we can get rid of this dump too. Don't need that anymore. So now if we jump to our restaurants view here and we uncomment this, and then I say that restaurants, and I do that, and then I say restaurant in, we're able to go create a list using our restaurants, and I can just say text right here. And we might be able to see this in preview, so let me load this. And I could probably say restaurant display name and then say text. And we might be able to see this in preview, so nice. Yeah, so we see a list of pretty much what I asked for. I said I wanted food in Jamaica, and it gave me some places that have that name, that refer to that name. What I want to do though is make sure that I only want restaurants. I don't want say a party or nothing like that. I only want restaurants. So to specify only a certain type of place, we can jump to say our Google Docs documentation again. And let's look at the parameters that we can use. So we have some required parameters. We added all the required ones, so you can just swoop past that. And for optional parameters, you can see the first one we see is included type. And so restricts the result to place. So basically included types makes it that, just like I said, if I only want to see, so be able to search for restaurants or places or bars, it will filter my search just on those. So I'll only get those type of stuff. You have some other parameters here, but yeah, I don't think we need any of those right now. So I'll add this one, the included type. Now I'll jump back to Xcode and I'll jump to service. And then inside the data that we're sending originally text query, we're gonna add another element or whatever you want to call this, entry. And then we're gonna say this, and the new key for this is gonna be included type. Add that, and then the value that we have to send, since we only want restaurants, we don't want bar or nothing like that, just say restaurant. Now if we run our API again, I run our app again, it will make sure that we only get restaurants. So it look almost the same thing. I think it was because I specified food last time, it kind of just gave us something like that. But if we close that, let's stop that, we see I got a warning here, our error saying that, yo, publishing changes from background thread is not allowed. And it says make sure to publish values from the main thread. I also see, you might, let me maximize this. You might not be able to see this part very well, but I also got a purple warning up here. And if I click on that, and it highlights an issue over here. And if I click on that now, you see, get rid of this. Make sure my face not blocking it. If I click on this now, I see it's focused on this line is marked in purple. If we click on this again, it says again, publishing changes from the background thread is not allowed. So you have to make sure that any changes that we're making that updates the UI, we have to make sure we add those changes on the main thread. And since we're running, our function is done asynchronously, we'll end up updating this on the background thread. So to fix this, mad easy, we could just mark this function with a decorator main actor. And if we run it, let's get rid of this breakpoint and minimize this. And then if we run this again, we shouldn't see that error there. So move this up a bit, do some stuff. No error. So now we got rid of that threading error that I mentioned. All right, so now, right now, all we're doing is pretty much specifying that we want food in Jamaica, but we want the app to be able to, the user to type in any thing that they want to search for, because it's a text search API. So we can type in whatever you want to search for and it will give us some places based on that. But remember, we specified we only wanted restaurants. So to make it that the user can type in whatever they want, we have to replace this string here. So we have to add a publish string, so a way that whenever the user types in anything, we can track it. So let's start by doing another publish variable. So it's a publish bar search term. Make it a string type. Set it empty. And now I'm just gonna pass this inside here. And if I run this again, we won't see anything because right now the string is empty and we're not even using the search term in the view. So you won't see anything, but we're about to change that. So we're gonna run jump to restaurants view. And yo, Swift makes it very easy to add like a search bar. So if I load up our preview here, restaurants view. Okay, so it's not showing anything because, well, we're not passing in the search term, so that's why you just see a blank view right here. But let's just change one thing. Let's make it that we have a nav title, and then we're gonna get back to the search, to adding the search term. So let's cut this for 1 second and make a navigation, and then we're gonna paste this same thing right back, and then I'm gonna say navigation title X, and I'll just say restaurants. Nice. Yeah. So now what we want to do is add a text field so that the user can type in the text and then we can search based on whatever they typed in. So to do this pretty easy is by adding a modifier. So all these dot things that you see me have been adding are dot task, dot navigation title, that basically added a new like power, like a new ability, a new feature to the V stack. They're called modifiers, and modifiers are just a way, just like I said, if you can add a new power or ability to some type of view. So I want to add the new ability to make it that I can show a search field. So to do that, it's not easy. I just say dot searchable, and you see it comes up here with this modifier. And right now it says binding string, but basically I have to pass some string, which is what we created in our view model here. Jump to it, search term, which is what we created in our view model. And because it's published, that means we can make it binding. And basically for binding, you can just think of it as a way that like we are listening for different changes that might be happening to this string. There's more to it, but that's like a super simple way to understand it. So like if somebody types in a new character, we are listening for that in a way. Okay, so let's say $ view model, and then we'll say search term, which is our string. And now if we load our preview, we see like a super basic text field right here. Alrighty, right? And you can type in some stuff. I love previews, like you can just do all of this so easy. All right, so yeah, let's cancel that. And we get that cancel button for free. Like, yo. All right, so remember UI, there was an older way to do all this and it used to take so much time. All right, so next thing is we want to then, let's add some prompt to this actually. So if you want to add, so one thing with these abilities, our modifiers, is that you see how it has searchable and then we had to add in a text. There are different like parameters that you have abilities to. So if you want a certain change up your ability a little bit, you could say, so one thing I want to do is add a prompt. So a prompt is a way how you can add some text that when the text is empty, you kind of give the user some information on what to do. I'll say search for a place. I see it automatically just updates right there in the view. Anyways, so just wanted to make that look a little bit better. Next thing we're going to do now is we want to make it that basically whenever the user taps, can I show the keyboard from? Nah, it looks like I can't show the keyboard from here. So I will show you this example. Before I begin, I'm gonna show you, go to the next step. I'll show you this example and I'm gonna run the simulator. And then when we click on this, I have to show you the keyboard. Okay, yeah. So when we click on like the search field, we want to make it that whenever we type something, we can press search and then we will actually search for the place that we want. So what you should be thinking about is like, how are we gonna make the API call when this button is pressed? And this is the system keyboard that comes with your phone. So to do that, there is another modifier that you just have to add in. Again, I'm have to just get Apple props because they just make it so easy with SwiftUI. So the modifier that we need is just submit, and then I will say unsubmit. So it's basically whenever the user clicks on this button, do something. So the button that we want to track for our submit triggers is search, which is a button we just saw on the keyboard, right? And then for the action, we want to make it that we make the API call. So before we were making the API call right as we arrived on the screen, but that doesn't work anymore since there's no search term. There's nothing in the text field to search for. So it doesn't make sense we do it when the API, when the screen just first time renders. Instead, it makes sense when we type in something and then we made the API call. So let's get rid of the task modifier here. Because I was doing it as soon as the screen appeared, we're making the API call, which is wasteful as ever, but we had to test, So instead, we're going to paste it inside on submit of.search. And we get this error. I don't know why this function doesn't accept asynchronous calls, but basically it's saying that, let me click on it. It's saying cannot pass function of type asynchronous to a parameter expecting a synchronous function. So it's saying like, this modifier expects only synchronous work to be done inside our closure, but you're using await view model.fetch restaurants, which is an async function. They're saying like, you can't do that in here. But to fix this, we just have to wrap this in a task, and we just plop the same thing in there, and that pretty much makes it that we can handle asynchronous calls within a synchronous context. All right. Or basically make it that we can make asynchronous calls in a place that's expecting synchronous work to be done. So let's run that again. Minimize, and let's run that again. Cool. All right, so now we are able to, so what we should do, let's set a breakpoint in unsubmit, because basically, get rid of this. Yeah, because basically what we want is that whenever I type in something and I search for it, this should be a hit. So I'm going to type in Jamaica. And I'm using the keyboard so you can see it better. If you're using like Xcode, you can still just press enter on your keyboard. But y'all are watching, so I want y'all to see. And as you see, as soon as I pressed enter or search, it did hit the breakpoint, which is here. So yeah, so we know this is working. So we can get rid of this breakpoint and let's just see what our UI shows us. So it shows us pretty much this stuff, some data right here. Okay, that looked decent. Cool. So now we know we can search for places based on the response, based on the search type that we gave, whatever we entered in the text field. So let's jump back to the view. And the next thing we want to do, let's close this, right? The next thing we want to do is, we wanted to test to see what kind of data we can get, if we could really get the data. Now we know our logic is working where we are getting the data. So let's get more data to make this view look way better. So a couple things, let's look at the places object to see what other data we could probably want to get. And then we'd have to just jump back here and update our restaurant model to get that. So right now we're just looking for 3 things. we're gonna add way more stuff here. Let's jump back to here and let's look for that places object that we found before. Oh yeah, place. And let's see what else it has. So it has ID, display name, it has types. I don't really see us using types, primary type, don't really need that. National phone number would be good. International phone number would be good. Let's minimize this and let's just, can you see this too? Yeah, y'all should be good. All right, so let's grab a couple of these numbers. So we'll grab national phone number, and that's a string, mad easy. So that national phone number, and I think this is optional. Yeah, because a lot of places don't always have a phone number attached, so I recommend doing that optional. I think I tried before, and actually when I tried with this API before, it was saying that certain places, like you make some API requests, and then some would work fine and give us a national phone number, and then others that the business didn't have a phone number set up, it wouldn't be able to decode. So I'd recommend making this a optional. Next thing is the address. Yeah, we definitely need this. I feel like every place will have an address, so I wouldn't stress this. So we'll say short formatted address and just put a string right there. If we find out that when we're searching, we don't have this, you just need to check the error that occurs when you try to decode, and when you check that error, so the error that would occur when we try to decode here. So when we say try to decode JSON decoder.decode, this error, whatever error that we get in this catch block, which is linked to our decoder, would tell us what parameter is the problem. But honestly, like, it's one of the safest bet. If you know you're going to be using, you want to make sure that we don't get this error, I would say just make it optional. But I feel like most places will have a address. But what about like online businesses? So I feel like I'm gonna stick with it being not optional. But if you want to make it optional, you can. There is a property called address components. Let's see what this is. So it has long text, short text. Don't feel like we care about that since we already have short formatted address. We could grab a location, that would be good. So let's grab that, and it looks like location is a nested object. So let's see what this looks like. Just a latitude and longitude. Let's make something to match that nested object. So struct restaurant, I'll just call it restaurant location, and just make it decodable. I'll say latitude, and what did they say? It has to be a double. They said number, but yo, this is a double. And this cannot be optional because you gotta be on the earth. So you gotta have some longitude. I'll make this double. And then what was the type actually? Location. So we'll say let location, and then we'll use our model that we just created. Won't make that optional because yeah, just like I said. Don't know what viewport is, doesn't seem like we're gonna really need that, but rating will definitely need this. And it says number, but this is definitely a double. I'm wondering if when they say number that means double, but this is the double. So that rating, I'll be just a double. Bell. And then we need Google Maps URI. Do we need website URI? Not really. Reviews would be good, I guess. Let's hold off on reviews. We'll add that if we, depending on the time that we have. But what we definitely want is photos. We want to definitely at least show the user photo. And then you see it's mad other stuff. So dine in, we can tell if it's dine in, if they offer delivery, if they offer takeout, all of this. There's a bunch of stuff. So based on the app that you're making, you can decide like what parameters you want to make. But now I'm gonna go with photos because that's definitely what I'm gonna need. Let's see, look at what this photos check looks. Make that. So let's say restaurant photo. And let's make it decodable. So we can decode it. And then type that we need is name with alright, so name string. What is the is with p commands after that? String 2, I think it was height px. It was height px. The height. And content URI, maps URI. Okay, cool. That looks decent. All right, so we have a couple of new things that we can add then that we can kind of add inside our view. So we have the name, but that's not actually the name, that's like the endpoint. And we have a display name, we have a phone number, we have the location, and we have a rating. So we can update our view to have more information. So let's stop this for a second and jump back to restaurants view. And right now we're only showing some type of text, but let's build this out and add some more things. So let's cut this, add a VStack instead. Right there. This. Okay. And we're gonna add a VStack instead, paste back that title right there. And then so it's gonna be, let's see if we can just show all this in preview. Oh no, it won't right now since search term is empty. So for now, I'm gonna add like a term to search term just so we can keep seeing data as we update the view. I'm gonna say again, food in Japan. So when it loads, it should be searching for food in Japan. Oh, it thinks search term. Oh yeah, cool. It did. But it didn't just fire because we have to press the search button. All right, cool. So I hit search. Can I search from here? Nope, I can't. I have to load the preview to hit search. All right, let's just build out the view of what we think we might want for now, and then we'll do it a little bit later. So we'll say we want like the name to be more than likely bold. Yeah, I just want this bold. That too. Yeah, I had a feeling I didn't need this. Yeah, and now other things. So we have the name, and then I'm thinking, oh, font weight. Right. I know I'm thinking right across from the name, we could have like the rating. So we'd have name here and then rating over here, because that's the first thing me personally that I care about. And then right below that, we'll just have the address. Cool. All right. So we'll say name here. And then right across, we'll have the rating. So we'll say H stack. Pop this inside of H stack. Add a spacer between them. And then over here, which would be the rating view, the text. And then I think rating is a double, remember? So we'll say text, convert it to a string. It's a restaurant.rating. Right? And then right below this, I'm thinking that I'm gonna add some padding because I feel like we might not have enough space. I know, like I am trying to visualize this without running it, but I feel like we'll be okay enough. And then right below this, let me scroll down. Sorry about that, peeps. I keep blocking y'all. All right, so now when I scroll down, I will add a, what was this? I'm going to add a text that actually shows just the restaurant's address. So for a short formatted address. Now let's run this. And we can get rid of the text that we added inside our search term here. Let's just run again. Ignore that, don't go PowerShell. Okay. All right, so is it done? Yeah. All right, so now we're just gonna search for food. We're gonna have to use a keyboard. All right, I want y'all to see, but eventually after this, it's the last one I'm gonna show you the keyboard for. After this, you get the point. I'm just gonna start just typing it. All right, so food. Okay. And as you see, it says operation. So we get an error here. So let's see what parameter might be giving. So we updated the model a lot. So let's see what parameter might be giving the issue. Let's jump back to our services. And then we'll scroll down here, re-add this breakpoint. And then we're gonna make that same API call. Search. And you see all of this. I am just gonna clear that, and then I'll say people error, and then it's happening here again because you see this is why I kind of like wrapping my do cache here, but we could have handled it here too. But basically, I know it's gonna be a decoding error since it happened here, and now I can just say PO error, what that error is. And right here it says no value associated with key values latitude and longitude. So there's actually a somewhere where location is nil. No way, that's not possible. What are they saying? No value associated with key values, local latitude and longitude. So I guess location is actually nil for somebody. If I go back here and I set this to optional and I run, I'm gonna do the same search. So food in Japan. As I told you, alright, I'm gonna spoil y'all one more time. Food, I'm gonna stick you to the keyboard. Food in Japan. Search. We hit that error again, so let's see different one. The PO error. And it says string value index 0. So the first one inside the first element inside places, coding key, location, no value associated with key value appears, longitude. Yeah, but we just said that to an optional. They're saying, let me comment this out just for a second, and then now we know we're not using it, so we shouldn't even be hitting that error. So food in Japan, and I'm getting rid of the keyboard. Command Shift K, Command Shift K. Food in Japan. Oh, okay, so it really was that location, because now we're able to see it. Go here. And I think what might be happening for that is we did set this to optional, but I think what happens is that there's a case where it's not optional and one of these values are nil. Weird. Now I re-add this. I'll run this again. Right now I'm just trying to track down which value for food, and it says the first index too. Okay, so we see it now. So I guess it's like one of these values were nil, so it's either the latitude or the longitude, but we have one of them, which is very weird. So this is one thing I would mention. So for I don't know if you could see that. So yeah, I had to set restaurant location. So one, I set the actual location property optional here, but that wasn't enough. I think there's a case where one of the latitude has a value and then one of the longitude doesn't have a value. So then it was in error. So when you're creating your models, honestly, with using Google Places, you might need to be safe to make sure that somebody doesn't search for something else that you might not search for and then it crashes or you get an error. You might want to just make some of your properties optional, so just to be safe. So like we're seeing right now, and we live coding people, so expect some mistakes. So yeah, so next maximize this again, since we know some people actually might not have a location. So let's jump back to restaurant view and let's look at the view again. I wasn't really paying attention to it. I was more so just surprised about the location thing. So I'll look at the location and then I'll say food in Japan. And I kind of like this so far. I know it's super basic, but you get the point. So what I want to do though is make all of this kind of left aligned, at least these two things like the name and the address. So I think all we can do for that is alignment or VStack, and then just say leading. I want to run this Mac real quick to see if that really did make the difference we need. Then I'll say food in Japan. Oh, okay, yeah, so this is pretty much what I'm looking for. Really simple, to the point. See the 4.4 here for the rating. Yeah, I'm cool with this. So what we're gonna do now is a couple things. So we're gonna make it that we can tap on any of these rows and then we get pushed to a different screen. Yo, you know what? Actually, let's add an image here. That's the last thing we're gonna do. So for each of these inside this post right here, we're gonna add an image. So we're gonna add an image kind of right between restaurants and the location. So that's the last thing well, that's the last thing, but that's the next thing we're gonna, well, the second to the next thing we're gonna do. The first thing we're gonna do is cut this view right here, and we're gonna make a separate view for this instead of having all this logic right here. Y'all can see it's all done. All right, cut that. I just delete that or cut it. I gotta delete that. All right, so now I cut it now. Now inside restaurant view, we're gonna make a new folder and we're gonna call this restaurant row. Row view, you could call it that too. And then inside this, I'm literally gonna make a SwiftUI view and I'm gonna call it restaurant row view too. All right, one thing. All right, so now we will remove this text that we have there using that. And it's gonna complain because it's like, yo, we don't know what restaurant is. So we have to tell it what restaurant is. Basically, we're gonna pass that restaurant model that we were using when we were iterating over the array of restaurants. We're gonna pass it in here. What's a restaurant? Right, and now those errors disappear, but now previews is an issue. So now we will say this restaurant and takes all of this stuff. So I'll say ID. Let's just say, I don't know, 1. And I'll just say some stuff. This is one thing I really do not like when I have to fill out previews. I'll just say some numbers, some address, 1, this address, this no, rating 4.2. All right, boom. So previews is done. Sorry, people. Sometimes it's just so annoying filling out previews. All right, so let's jump to restaurants view, and then we'll jump to rest, and then we're gonna use restaurant row view here, which is pretty much where we had all that stuff, which was restaurant view. It's known that just now compressed or confined inside one view that we can easily use. So the restaurant row view, and it accept that restaurant, so we pass that in. And if we run this, we should see the same exact thing. All right, so we go here and let's type in food and jump out. Nice. So we see the same exact thing. All right, so what we're gonna do now is again see if we can add a photo to each of these rows, so we can see like an image of what the restaurant logo is, or maybe whatever food they got, or whatever that might be. So to do that, we are gonna stop this for 1 second, and then we're gonna open this up, and then we're gonna jump back to restaurant row view. And then remember, this is kind of where we want to add it. We want to add it basically where the spacer is. So more than likely, what we're going to use to add this image is a URL. So for now, I'm going to go with using an async image. But there is an issue with using an async image though. So I'll go here. We actually don't have the URL that we need. Don't have a couple things. I'm going to comment this out for now. And what we need to do is create the URL that we're going to need. All these other parameters, you will be able to fill them out later. But the only thing you really need right now is a URL. So I'm going to tell you something else about async image, but I'm going to push that to a bit later. For now, let's see if we can create the URL for the photos. So we're going to jump to restaurant view model right here. And let's see. Basically, what we could do is basically make it that we could create the URL and then just pass it to a row view. But another option that we have that we could do too is make it that the restaurant row view actually has its own view model, and within those view model it actually constructs the URL. I feel like I kind of like that approach better. We're going to make a change here, and then we're going to introduce a restaurant row view model. So we'll say new file with file, and we'll say restaurant row view. And literally the main thing is the only thing real thing is going to be is just for creating that image URL. So restaurant row view model doesn't need to be an observable object. And for this, we're going to make it that this, so the restaurant that we were passing, that restaurant model, this right here where we're passing, yeah, so this restaurant model that we're passing here, we're not going to use that anymore. Instead, we're going to have this view model, and then that view model is pretty much gonna so we don't have to do it this way. So we could do two things. We could have it use a restaurant view model, or we could have it use our same restaurants list view model. I guess the way would just be continue with using one view model, and then I could show you how to optimize it maybe later. All right, so let's do that. So we'll stick with what we have. I know, sorry. And then I'll show you the more way how to optimize it by making restaurant view row view later have its own view model. So instead we're going to stick with one. So for this now inside, so we'll pause with this file right here. We won't delete it for now. Actually, I will, just not to distract you. So I'll just delete restaurant row. And then inside restaurant view model, which is just the main view model, we're going to create a new function. And then we're going to call it, I kind of feel like we should really just make a row view model. I know I'm being indecisive now, but we'll change it later on, like I said. So we'll call this func create photo URL. And then we will say like this and have this return an optional URL. And what we need to do now is basically see how we can how do we create this URL, like what is needed to create this URL. So to do that, let's minimize this for a second. I want to just put a return nil for now. We're going to jump back to our pretty much our Google Places thing, and we're going to look at what our photos is actually. Photos, let's see if they mention how to create the URL itself. Says name is identifier representing this. So it's not. Whereas how do we create the URL? Nothing's in here. Let's jump over to skip that. And we'll go back one more over to where here. Yeah, so we see right here, we see a different endpoint called place photo. So let's look at what they might be doing here. I will maximize this since we're going to be focusing a lot on this part. So it says place photo request. And it says a place photo request is an HTTP GET request to a URL in the form like this. And yeah, we're the following, so it needs a name, API key, and then the parameters. What are parameters? So it's either a max height and a max width. Okay, so to construct our photos URL, we have to follow this format, right? So let's just copy this for now so that we don't have to go back and forth. And then we're just gonna plop this right here. So let's just put this up here and then just comment it out for now. Right? And we need something like this. We need a name, and we know that on each photo, if we go back to search, and then we scroll down where we could place. Where are you? Oh yeah, place right here. And we go to photo. Photo is photos. Oh yeah, photos here. So I'm inside the place object, and I went down to look for photos. I want to look on photo. So I see it requires a name, and then our photo model will have a name, so we know where to get this. It requires an API key, and you will have your API key you just need by now. You're gonna see me use it again. You're gonna see me use a bit different. I already saved my API key to my user default, so I'm gonna have to fetch it from user defaults. I'm gonna be that part of different from you. And now we need parameters, and those parameters are, I think it was height px and width px. Back to photo, yeah. Oh yeah, max height px and max width px. All right, add this in. Just comment it out so that we don't, so that we can stay in Xcode with px. All right. So now let's maximize Xcode again and let's focus on Xcode. All right. Now we are going to be creating the photo URL. So to create it, we have the layout of what is needed. So let's see, make a rough version of it. So to get the photo, we'll have to pass in type of photo type. We'll say photo. That's gonna be our restaurant photo type. I remember that's what we use inside our model to represent photos. Oh, where is it? Oh, actually, I didn't add in photos yet. So I created the photo model, but I didn't add in photos yet inside our restaurant. Let's add that in real quick. Select photos, and then we'll say an array of restaurant. I am kind of nervous. This could be optional too, so I'll add an optional right there. I'll add a question sign right there. And now what we'll be able to do is use get restaurant name from our photo. So let's let's start constructing this URL. See if we can make a basic string first. So let image string equal, and then the first thing we want to change is name. So and we'll be able to get that from our photo.name. Next thing is we have to add in our API key. And I will be getting this from user defaults. You will just be able to just type it in. So I'll say that API key equal user defaults. That's standard. That's string. Okay. And then I'll just say API key here. And I know this is here, so I just will handle or optional like that. One sec, chat. Just okay, cool, all good. Now we will place our API key inside this part here, which was expecting an API key. So let's do this key. And now we need to add parameters, max height, max width. So I can just say max. Let's just do a size. So this is basically how big the max height you want to get the image. So I'm gonna say like max height. I'll make this 300. And then for the next parameter, we're just gonna hit and so we can add on that next parameter. I'm gonna say max width. And I'm about to make this 300 too. And now we have constructed our image string in a very hideous way. It's better to use an enum, but for now it should work. So let's say URL, and we're gonna pass in the string, that hideous string that we just created. And now this should be okay. So let's get rid of this portion. All right. And inside here, so now we have a function inside. Oh my gosh, y'all weren't seeing any of this. So I'll go over this. So basically it's a function I created called create photo URL, and it accepts a photo. And right here, I'm getting my API key from user defaults. You won't have to do that. You will just be able to just put your thing as a raw string. And then I start creating the URL, which is the URL that we saw here. So you can see it. The URL that we saw here for creating an image, creating the URL to show an image. So we just copy that. And then once we copied that, we pretty much just replace the parameters. So we added in the photo name, which is a parameter on the photo model that Google returns. Added in my API key, I also added in 2 additional parameters, max height px. I set mine to 300. That's the height I want mine. You can put yours as whatever you want. To separate them, to know it's different, I put an and here. And then right here, I put max width. I put the sizing again, 300. So boom. So we have that. So let's see if this works, yo. Now that we have this, we need a way how to basically introduce this to our restaurant row view. So one way how we could do this is basically inside a restaurant row view, we could make it that. So this is why I was originally thinking about using a separate view model just for restaurant row view model. And now I have to use my restaurants view model inside our restaurant row view, which honestly I don't feel the best about. I'd rather just create a separate view model, but for now, for simple sakes, I'll do it this way. And then later on, we are going to optimize this. So for now, let's just add a new parameter here, and it's going to be an observed object. And you must be like, yo, why are you using an observed object right now when you used a state object before? So the reason I'm using an observed object now is because this is a nested view inside another view. I'm using an observed object. For the main view, I'm using a state object. So from articles I've read online, it says if you're using a view that is nested inside another view, it's recommended to use an observed object, since that's what Apple recommends. Don't remember all the details right now, but that's pretty much the idea. If you know, just add it in the comments. So I'm gonna make it that it takes in our restaurants view model. Now that it does take in our restaurants view model, excuse me, sorry. Let's just do one quick thing. Let's jump back to restaurants view. And then this is gonna complain saying that, yo, I need a view model. And then I'll add that in, and then we'll just pass in our view model here. But now you see I'm passing in 2 parameters. This is killing me. I really want to switch it, but I'm gonna call. So yo, alright, so jump back to restaurants row view. And now that we do have access to our view model, let's uncomment this. And our view model, remember, can make the URLs that we need. So what we could do is say just view model that create photo URL, and we have the restaurant model that we need, which is this. So just drop in restaurant. Oh, this takes a restaurant photo. So I'll say restaurant. And then let's grab the first one. It's going to be optional because I'm trying to grab it by first, so I can't just use it like this. If I use it like this, you're going to see an error, right? So instead, what I'm going to do is remove that portion right there. And I'm going to say something like if let photo. And then I'm going to say photo is equal to restaurant.photos. And then just get me the first photo in that array. Basically, I'm just going to show one image because we can get that photo. Then I'll cut this and then drop this inside our if let. And then I can just say photo pass. Oh yeah, we can just say view model dot create photo URL, and I'm going to pass in photo here. Remember, we already made it that this function creates the URL that we need. It's an optional. What are you complaining about? It needs me to just fill. So let's drag that over. Sometimes Xcode is just weird. I'll say async image. I remember we're not keeping async image. We're just doing this temporarily. So say photo. I would say view model dot. Even do it even better. So instead of adding the view model here, we could add the check here and say photo URL equal to view model dot create photo URL, and then say photo. Just so much work being done inside of view. Yeah, so basically we are able to get the photo URL from view model here. create it. And then I'll say photo URL. And I know people, we have to do some cleanup after this. No, but let's go. The image, and then we'll say not resizable. And let's make, remember we requested a height and width of 300, so let's use that exact height. And so this portion here is going to be the image that we're seeing, right? And then for you can see that, and then for placeholder, I'm just going to put progress view and just make that some type of spinner. So now what's going to happen is we should be able to at least see an image on that list for the view. But let's minimize that, and then we're going to run again. Oh yeah, we hit one error, so let's just jump to that. I think we just need to update the parameter. Of course, it's our preview. I'm gonna remove this for now, can't bother with that. And I'll run. Still succeeded. Here I'll type in food in Japan. And we hit an error. So let's see which parameter is missing. The PO. I know it's a decode error, so it's saying there's a parameter where width x is actually empty. Now, I'm guessing that's a case where they don't have an image. So let's jump to our model. We're going to make width px and that be optional. Width px, width height b. And then let's run again. Again, food in Japan. We hit another error, so let's see which parameter it's complaining about. So we could try with like a different string and we might not hit the error. It's just that some places might have this value and then some places might not. So it's expected to decode string, but for number instead. Okay. So for width px, it's expected to decode a string, but it found a number. So I guess that's a part. Let's just look at the documentation first though. Make sure. So we'll click on text search. We're going to scroll down and go to the places object. And then we're going to scroll to photo. Inside photos, it says string, integer. Now let's look at our model. Photo, it says, oh yeah, you're right. Where was yeah, so photo. It's a string, integer, integer. So it's really these two values right here. So we'll say int. I wonder if that was the issue. We don't need these as optional. And we shouldn't hit that error this time. So we'll type in food in Japan. Ah, perfect. So we do see it, but the image is massive. Okay, way bigger than we needed. So I think we're adding this inside our H stack. Actually, all we want to do is add it not in our H stack. So but at least we know one, we're able to see the image now. It's just repositioning that image and putting it at the right place. Let's stop that. And this is going to be a quick fix, so I'm not going to stay too long inside here. So I'll cut this right here. And okay, yeah. So for our async image portion right here, I'll grab this, cut it, come on. And then I'll put back the spacer that was here. Cause you see, that's actually our A stack. Put that portion at the wrong place. It's supposed to be right here. So I'll put Command V. And one thing I noticed is I want the, I'm gonna show you what I meant. I want the image to have rounded corners. Let's add that into. Let's say corner radius, and we'll say make 6. I know if we rerun it, You'll notice now we should as how we expect. So we'll say in Japan. And now we pretty much see how we're expecting. One thing I want to do though, so I wonder if we'll see it. As you see, we've downloaded these images already. They're showing so K's restaurants and Ginza Japanese cuisine. We have them right. When I scroll down, and I scroll all the way down, I want to make sure that when I scroll up, I still see those images. They shouldn't be re-downloading. If I shoot up there, we didn't really see it, but really though, you saw how the flickered, kind of flickered a bit. You see that? That's because the image is re-downloading each time. And the reason you can do that is because async image doesn't cache the image. So each time to see that, we have to re-download it. So that can be very network intensive. So it's like, say if somebody is just on like a cellular plan that's using up all of their data just to keep doing this. So what I recommend instead is to use a third party that I like called SD Web Image SwiftUI. So I'm going to add that package in, and I'm going to replace async here, and we're going to make it that we're caching the images. So I'm going to jump to File, add Package Dependencies, and then I already have this, so I'll just say SD Web Image SwiftUI. But if you don't have this, all you have to do is just go to Google, let's type in SD Web Image SwiftUI. And it will more than likely be the first one you see here. Copy that, click that, click on code here, and then just copy this URL. And then when you get that URL, you just go to search and then just paste this, and you will be able to find SD Web Image. So I already have it because I've used it before. So it shows up right there in mine. So one thing you have to do is once you click on it, you have to make sure you add the target. So this value should not be none. Want to add the target, and the target is your app. So you're basically saying add this new feature to my app. Okay, but it's really called a package. Yeah, it's a way where you can add like outside code into your app to get like special abilities, but to add like new features and stuff. So for this, we want to add the SD Web Image UI. So it did some work and added it. So if we click here, see that for package dependencies, we have some new stuff here. So to use it, we're gonna say import SD Web Image SwiftUI, and then for SD Web Image SwiftUI, honestly, the parameters are really basically the same to async image. I think they did that on purpose so it's easier to use. All I have to do right here is just change this to web image, and this will work fine. But it is a separate struct being used. So if I load this now, if I run this, so again, now I switch from using async image, which is apples, which doesn't cache images, to using web image, which is SD Web Image SwiftUI that does cache images. So type in Japan, type in food in Japan, hit enter there, and we see that we load the images. If I scroll down, see we downloaded all those images, scrolling all the way down. And now when I scroll back up, I shouldn't see any flickering since we're not downloading any new images. So I'm scrolling, you don't see any flickering. Alright, so that's a quick way how you can handle caching in your app, for especially when it comes to images. Alright, that's good. Now, so we basically have like, let's run this again. I just want to look at the UI one more time. The first thing I'm noticing though before we do that is whenever we launch the app, since we haven't started searching for anything yet, we see this blank screen. Not helpful at all. If I came here, I wouldn't know what to do. So to fix this, we can add a content unavailable view. So this is going to be like an empty view that we show if there are no restaurants on the screen right now. So to do that, it's pretty easy. So let's jump back to restaurants view. And then right here where it says where we're creating, minimize, we're going to maximize Xcode. Yeah, so here, let me make sure I'm not blocking it. Yeah, so here where we're actually showing the list, instead of showing the list, what we're gonna do so if there are no restaurants, it doesn't make sense. If there are no restaurants in the array, it doesn't make sense to show the list. So we're gonna make it that there are no restaurants, we show content unavailable view, and if there are restaurants, we just show the list. So we can do this by, let's say up here, if you model that restaurants is empty, but we're not really using is empty, we're going to use for now not empty. So we have some restaurants, and we're going to copy this, cut it, paste it inside this scenario. So we're saying if we do have some restaurants, then so this, if we don't have some restaurants, like what will happen when we first go on the screen, we should be able to see this in SwiftUI view preview. I won't have to run it. I'm going to make it that we see a content unavailable view. So we look for the one that takes a system image and say a description. And then for the title that they're using here, say oh, restaurants found. And then for the system image, which is basically use any a bunch of different one that Apple provides inside SF symbols. Don't know what SF symbols is. SF symbols is this app right here, and basically it's like this really works great with Apple because like you get access to all these images and more. All of these, get access to all of these, and all you have to do is just copy the name of the image that you want, and then in any image, when you're using SwiftUI, if you're say using something like image system name, you just have to paste that name in there. Paste the name in there, and you would say person, you would paste that in there, and you would see you'd get that image. So it's like less work for us to do as iOS engineers because I am not a designer. That's really helpful. So now we'll add in the description for the content unavailable view. So saying, so you see a basic view right here. So it's gonna be like a magnifying glass that no restaurants found. And then we could say say search for a restaurant or details about a restaurant. So now we're telling the user like, yo, you're on this blank screen, and if you don't know what to do, I'm kind of giving you an idea of what to do. So right here. But if you want to see it in the simulator, I'll run it. Do that. Cool. So you see, so instead of just seeing a blank screen, now we see this view. And again, we can still search. So let's do food in Jamaica this time. And reload it, and we are able to see food, some restaurants in Jamaica that match. We type that in. Nice. This is pretty much what we want right now. This is looking pretty good. What I am thinking though is that we could one thing that we could do also is that add like some errors, so we could make it that if there's an error, we show like an error alert. And we could also add a progress view, which is like a spinner, because some data might take extra long to show up, so we want to show a spinner. So let's add the easiest one first, which is spinner first, and then we'll add the error. Let's stop this, and then we'll jump to restaurants view model, and then we'll create a new variable, call this a publish bar, and say is loading. We're gonna make it a boolean, set it to false. And then we're only going to set this because when do we want to show? We want to show the spinner when we first made that API call, because we don't know when it's going to change. So we'll say when we're about to make it, we say is loading is equal to true. And then what we want to do is change it back to false whenever we're done with the API call, whether it succeeds or it fails. We want to stop showing the spinner so the user can interact with the view. So an easy way to do this is using defer. Basically making it that it's the last thing that's going to be called in the function, and then we'll say is loading is equal to false. So that way, after all that's done, we will always just dismiss spinner. So now to actually show the spinner, we have to jump over to our restaurants view, And then for our VStack, we're going to add another modifier. So remember, our modifier is basically a way how you can add another ability to. So for this modifier, I'm going to call it, it's going to be overlay. Hit enter, and then it's going to be based on, oh, you can, sorry. So I added this overlay modifier. I'm going to make it that if model that is loading, that property is true. If the model that is loading is true, then we're going to show a progress view. Let's add some more text to this just so we can say title key. Then we'll say fetching restaurant. Right. Let's minimize this again and let's run. And now we're gonna say search for food, and I'll just do someone that might take it a little bit while. I'll just type in some stuff. And you see that spinner right there? It did throw an error. I'm not sure it shouldn't have thrown an error for this because we didn't type in anything for any real data. It's a PO error. I'm saying that it returned some data, but the rating value was optional. So let's jump to restaurant response. I will set rating to be an optional thing, and let's run again. I don't even remember what I typed in. All right, so we have to update the view that was using optional, say 0, and let's run again. And then I'll say food and blah blah blah. And you see that spinner that's loading, but it still found us some type of data based on some gibberish that I wrote. So I guess Google must have like some extra logic behind their API that kind of, if it doesn't find it, it tries to find restaurants based on your location. Cause these are some restaurants that are somewhat nearby. They're a couple miles away, but they're nearby enough. I know it's like if it can't find exactly what I'm looking for, it looks like it just finds restaurants nearby you. No, I didn't give Maps my personal location, so I'm guessing they're doing this based on my internet's IP address. Which, yeah. Anyways, so let's close this. But you did see the original, so let's say again food in some place. And then we're gonna see, and what we want to look if we see that loading spinner. So you see it fetching restaurants. So it's pretty quick, but that's because the API is moving pretty fast. That's why we see, but we know the loading spinner is working. Right. So we can pause that, stop that right there. And now let's look at the next thing that we mentioned, and that is adding in a what you call it, some error alert. So if we get the alert, if we get an error, we show it in the view. But to do that, we're gonna add 2 more properties too. So we're gonna say Command C, grab that, get some space. And then for this one, I'm gonna say I'm gonna create a boolean called show error alert. And then I'm gonna add another variable. It's called publish. I'm gonna make this var error message, make it a string, and then I'll make this like that. Now I want to basically show error alert if we end up in the catch block. So we can get rid of that and we can say show error alert. But I can't just toggle the alert, the error, show the error alert if we haven't even given it some type of error message. What I could do just for now, we're gonna make one more change, is say error message, the property we just made, and then use error, which is the property that just comes inside the catch block, not one I made, and grab the error description it mentions and set it to our error message. And now if we jump back to restaurants view, we have to add another modifier, and I'm going to add this one above overlay. I'm going to call it an alert. So yo, UI is just like the boss, because like it's just almost readable. So I want to add an alert, so I add a alert modifier. I want to add an overlay, so I add an overlay modifier. It's nice. So now it requires a binding which tells when to show the alert. Remember, we created a variable for that. It's called show error alert in our view model. And now for the content, we just have to use alert, and then it requires a title, so we'll say text. And then we're going to use the error message variable that we created to is a string. Now, if show alert, show error alert ever becomes true, we'll see an alert. And that only becomes true if we're inside a catch block, which is if we get an error. Nice. So let's make it that let's make it that our API request will fail. So let's just delete some from this and let's run it again. Minimize this. Okay, you see. And then I'm gonna make a search, say food in Japan, which is what we searched for before, and we were fine. And you see we get an error message that says operation could be completed, blah blah blah. So now we can just hit OK, and we know that our error message is working because we know that this should be working. It's just an issue just because I changed the endpoint. Cool. So I'll press X there, and then I'll jump back to Xcode. Stop that, and then minimize this. Nice. Now we can go back to our services right here, and we're not going to change this yet, but I'm going to show you a way how we can add better error messages. So inside our custom error that we have here, what we could do is, there are two ways. So the other one way how you can do this is, instead of conforming to error, you can make it that you conform to a localized error, and then that would help with you adding the necessary parts. You can work with this differently in SwiftUI to like show error, custom error, readable error messages. But I'm gonna keep with error for now, and I'm just gonna add a variable, call it error message, have it be some type of string, and the string that this is going to return is a more readable error message compared to what we just saw earlier, which is just something that the system told us. A regular user isn't that not going to help them. They need to know what's happening. Is it something's wrong with my internet? Is it I'm out of data? Some better error. So we switch on self here, which is basically we want to add a specific type of error message that we want to provide for the user. I will say return. Oh, now let's say bad URL. No, we're just adding some symbols. And then I'll say bad status code. And then for custom, remember we made it that we could pass in error message from the system here. And then we'll make it that this returns a string, and we'll say something went wrong. And then we're going to use the error message from the system here. Something I'm going to change to, so for our decoder happening here, now we have to jump back to our restaurants view model, and just instead of getting the error message like this, we are going to convert the error message that we usually just get from any catch block to our custom error message, which is service error, API error. Was it API? Yeah, API error. We convert it to that, and then we're gonna set error message to equal custom error dot error message. You remember that error message parameter that we just added with bad URL, whatever, based on whatever error it is, that error message will work with it. That now to services. Oh yeah, so I didn't fix our URL, so we probably get an error, but this might be saying like something went wrong, and it's gonna have like the error from the system there. At least for this, let's run it. Then we're gonna say food and Japan. Now we get an error, but you see how it mentioned something went wrong, and then it mentioned Apple error kind of here. A server with a specified host not be found. So based on wherever the error is thrown inside our service, say we had an invalid status code, we would have seen that error message matching bad status code in our error message. So that's like a quick way how we can show error messages in our app. So let's maximize this again, and let's just fix back our URL here. Oh snap. I think this was, let me just get back the right endpoint since I don't want to have to do that. Come back to Google website, back some, and here. So I'll copy this, jump back here, paste this, and add the correct one. Now, if I run this, we shouldn't see any errors. All right, so we can now see a list of restaurants. And if you want to say pick somewhere else, say a bar or whatever, see a list of them nearby. Now I'm feeling for that, so let's try to see. Change the included type and we change it to say bar. We should only see places that are bars, right? So that works. I'm just being curious right now. You don't have to do this part. Just messing around. So for search places, I'm gonna type in let's just type in near me. Okay, so it shows smoke, public home. I know these are bar and grills, but they're still kind of right. Let's say food in Japan. Let's see what. So we've been looking at food in Japan for a while. So let's see what if we'll see something different when we type it in now. Okay, so we do see some different type of stuff. So we see bar. So it looks like it is filtering down now to just show me, because this is different type of data. The places that have a bar, it might not be just a bar. It might be places that have a bar but are also restaurants. Honestly, most bars are gonna have like a restaurant. Let's see if we could try a different type. Last one. Let's see which one Google recommended. So if we go down here and we look at the included type parameter, there's a type for pharmacy. No way they can miss it. So I'll jump back here and then inside our text query, I'll change it from bar to on pharmacy. Now run it one more time, and now we should only see pharmacies. There's no way we're gonna see a bar or any type of food place unless that food place sell. Nah, we shouldn't see anything. So say food in Japan. And it didn't get us any actually hit a data here. So I said PO error. And it says no value associated with places. Oh, so we weren't able to find any places. So I guess one thing to note is that the actual entire array places can be optional. So let's jump to our models. And really that means that this could be empty. So if I run this again, we might get some errors in certain places. Yeah. Okay. And then let's run this again. We're going to type in the same exact thing. Food in Japan. I guess it's going to just return us an empty array. It's going to look like we're on the same screen. Yeah. Typing near me. Anything. Typing CVS. Okay, we found CVS because, well, that's a pharmacy. So we know that the included type now is working. So I'll stop torturing you for now. And I'll switch back this to restaurant, because that's really what we care about. All right, and I'm just gonna check one last time, people, just to make sure that it's working. I'll say food in Japan, and yep, it's working. So I'm just gonna minimize this portion and maximize our Xcode. Tap this. Let's come to our view model. Now what we have here is, we can basically connect to Google's Places API, get that data, show it. We can download the image, show it in a list. We can show some extra data too. That's like a good piece. One last thing, and then I'm done. So I think we're gonna end up doing the optimization in a different stream. But one last thing before we're done, that I'm gonna show you how we can show pretty much the locations on a map instead of just a list. So I'm freestyling this, so there's probably gonna be some times where I jump to Google. but that's part of programming. If you sometimes you have to just Google some of it. So I want to make it that we can switch between views. Like say, basically if we click a button, then we can switch from the list view to be, say, the map view. So to do that, and I'm gonna do it a very simple way though. So I'm gonna add a boolean here. We could do an enum. Let's do this. Go here, and then let's say something like is list view, and let's just set this to true. If this is true, basically we're gonna say show the list view, and then if it's false, then we'll make it that we show the map view. Let's jump back to restaurants view. And then you see all this logic right here. So this is basically all the logic that we need just for the list view. So we'll say further up here, we'll say if view model dot list view, show this stuff right there, right? That's all for the list view. List view. You don't have to do this portion. This is just me just deciding like, yo, I want to mess with maps. I want to see what it can do. So you can just, if you're good with, if you just need a list, then you're good. If you want to stick around, appreciate it. Stick around and just 5. Let me just see. So now what we're gonna do now is, so is list view, we want to add a different case where when the user toggles it, and we're gonna show a map view. So I think for this, we have to import map kit. The import map kit, right? And then a something like map. Then I think all we have to do is do this. So call out that map view and then say for each. I don't know if this will work. I'm just seeing if this happens. So view model. So we're going to iterate over restaurants again. And then for each restaurant, a restaurant. And, oh no, I did that wrong, right? A restaurant in. Oh, this is good. I think it's just like annotation, and I can put in the coordinates that you need. I don't remember exactly. Bear with me. So it should be like restaurant. That's display name. Next, and then for coordinates, we'll just pass in what we have for. What did I just pass in? I thought this should accept, yeah, a latitude and a longitude, which would be in doubles. They're saying degrees, but you can pass in doubles. I think they could degrees and doubles conform to the same protocol. That what the name of it is. Maybe numeric or something like that, or something. So basically, we can just say restaurant. For latitude, we're going to say restaurant dot station dot latitude. We made this optional, but it might not need to be optional. But for now, I'll just do this 0, 0. And then same thing for longitude. I'll say restaurant dot location longitude. Honestly, I don't want to use, because to show this on the map, we want to show it only if those coordinates are there. So instead of just using handling the optionals like that, we'll backspace that for a bit. And we're gonna check if those values really do exist by saying if let longitude equal restaurant dot location dot longitude, and then also if latitude exists, which is restaurant dot location dot latitude. So if these two values, latitude and longitude, are there, then create this annotation. Not 100% sure, as I said, if this is that way. We might need to refer to Google for a second, but honestly, Apple updated maps, so there is mad ways how to do a bunch of different stuff. There's like no set way, or there for some things there is, but there's just so many different ways to handle stuff. Cannot convert value of the restaurant range. Let's push here. Oh, it's saying this location. See what this is. Restaurant location. Yeah, it does have that. Or this is. I spelled this wrong. Drop this. And right there. If maybe let's comment this out. I said I was about. Oh, that why I was complaining because I had that extra space right there. Just because I had this code block right here, that's why I was complaining. Yo, this had me thinking like it was gonna be something serious. So, all right. So now we need a way how we can toggle from. So, all right, let's just see if we can make this. Let's just see what the view looks like. So, is less view is original set to true, but let's just set that to false for now. And we eventually do need to add a button or some way how we can switch to the next view. Okay, all right. So we see this maps right here, just by default. Let's see what happens if you try to search for something. So food in Japan. And we don't see anything. All right, so let's jump back here. And I'm gonna add the button just to see if like when we switch the list, are we seeing that data and it's just something wrong that we're doing with our maps? Oh, you know what it is? I think we have to add a marker. This marker. Marker. And we add what we want the title to be. Oh, basically just make a restaurant name, display name. I don't know what's up in my autocomplete right now. I think it's just text. And for coordinates, we're gonna let's just grab the same thing that we did here. Paste this here and see what happens when we do that. Latitude, longitude. We are gonna have to refer to Google to see what we might be missing here. Have the annotation. We try to add some here. Oh, you know what it is? I think I know what this is. Uncomment this out and let's use marker. I think annotation is like a separate view that can appear on the map, and then annotation is if you want a custom view. So I think that's what it is. Cut this for 1 second and comment out annotation right down here. Place marker here and then run this. Then we'll say food in Japan. Doesn't zoom in. Marker. Coordinate. Yeah, some. Let's see what we might be missing. So let's this and let's jump back to our browser. And we're just gonna we're good with the API basically, but let's make a different window. And we're gonna say SwiftUI maps. And let's just say marker. Let's say marker. What we might be missing. I'm gonna jump to Apple's document. Hope it's good. It have anything. Let's jump to this one, Apple. So it says map, and then we have some marker, and then we pass in the coordinates. So it should be like whatever the text is, whatever the name of the place is, and then we pass in coordinates. So we just pass into, and if we want a custom image, a custom type of marker, we use annotation. Should be good with just marker. So let's marker pass, give it some coordinate, and we want to show that's on the screen. I'm wondering if there are cases where latitude. All right, so let's try this instead. Show it. It has to be within. I have to. Each restaurant. Let's add the plus button so that we can toggle it just to see if. Here, so add a title key, and then we'll say which. And then inside the action, we're gonna say view model that is view. And then every time we do this, we'll toggle, so we'll be able to see the other view, either the list view or the map view. So we see here, when I toggle it, I do switch back there. All right, so I'm going from the map view again. I'm going to say food in Japan. And we don't see it there, but when I switch to the list, we are seeing it. Thing is now, are we getting those coordinates? I'm wondering. So I am going to switch to here, and we saying map view model each restaurant inside here. We show this. So instead of back to station second, so command that. Then for annotation, we will uncomment that, and then in here, annotations. Then we want to show a custom view, and I'll say nerdy. What I'm wondering is if some of these places don't have this, like a latitude and a longitude, until we're not getting in. So we're only showing the markers if they have that. They have both, but and food near me. We didn't see it, but if we switch, we do see it. Definitely something that we're not handling with the right here. Let's are able to at least X pretty much latitude longitude. I'm going to print this just to see if we're seeing that. All right, so let's see if we can actually, I'm going to set a breakpoint, actually get the data, and then in here I'm going to see if we're actually getting coordinates. Here, and I'm going to hit this one more time. Nice. And then I will go here, I'll say PO restaurants. Let's do first. Yeah, let's do first. And then we will do patient. Let's print that. Oh, so you see this right here. So we got the longitude, latitude 1, but this was nil. Okay. Let's see if, what about the second one? That's why it's not going there, because we only have one coordinate there. So let's try the second one, which would be 1. 1. Why does it keep? Now first hit enter, and the second one also doesn't have a longitude. Why do so many not have a longitude? Let's try the third one. So that's why we're not seeing it on the screen right there. It's because we're checking that it has to have a latitude and a longitude. Hit 2 here. And this also doesn't have a longitude. Let's jump to our model. Let's see if maybe we didn't add a longitude, or maybe for some reason we're not getting it from the API. Yeah, we have it, so it's a double. They're both doubles. Alright, we should be getting it, but for some reason Google is giving us it. Let's try with some that's, yeah, and this is near me. Of this, let's say San Fran. And then if we switch to the list, actually, that's better. Happy food. New York food. Add it. Which here we don't. In the data that we're getting back, it's longitude actually. Here, oh, the restaurant view model. And we have this breakpoint, so we'll turn on this breakpoint. And then we're going to make the same exact search and we're going to check to see if these items have a longitude and a latitude. So I'll say appeal restaurants location and location longitude again. So it looks like we're only getting latitude. Not sure why the API is giving us that since we are requesting it. I think that might be an issue just on their end. That might not be. That's pretty sure that's not some on our side that we can really handle. Because if the server is only returning nil for all longitudes, there's nothing really we can do at that point. All right, so what we could do then instead is if say let's not check for longitude, but if longitude is say nil, let's just put 0 or some other coordinate. So it's longitude, so we won't check for longitude. I know this is not how we do it, but the API just isn't returning us on that coordinate, so not really. And then we'll say for longitude right here, which would like the restaurant the location, and then if the nil, which it will be from what we I don't know, like coordinates are usually like weird. So that's 40.771. That's -7. Nah, that's I already know what to do. All right, so I'm gonna do 30, blah blah. And then I'm not sure where on the place of this because the longitude is obviously wrong. And then let's type in and we call the API. Let's check again to see if location is still nil for certain values. Okay, so the map did zoom in, and we see like the places, but it's not the right coordinate because server for some reason Google Places isn't giving us the correct longitude. So I feel like this is a blocker in our code right now. And so what I'm gonna suggest that we do is kind of just focus on working with the list. It might be an issue that Google is working on right now to fix, but for some reason, as we said, the server is just not giving us the longitude that we need. So we're gonna actually put a pause on the stream for now, and then I'll keep checking back the Google Places API server, and if I do find a time where they actually did fix whatever issue that might be, where longitude was returning nil, I'll pretty much just come back, create a stream, and finish up showing you how to do that. But so for the most part, what we're gonna really have done for today is creating that server, creating that API call using Google Places API, creating this list to show a list of different restaurants based on whatever we search in, and yeah, using SwiftUI and MVVM. So it was a long stream, but I feel like we touched a lot of detail. Hope you had fun. This was nice. If you like this, just like, comment, subscribe, and mention anything else you might want to see us